Gas Monkey Garage. So they're building a 1978 Ford F100, and I wanted to basically sit down along with the guys and kind of go over some of the stuff that they're doing, some of the parts they're using, and maybe a couple different cheaper options to give you guys. So let's get right into it and let's watch the video together.
So while we're waiting on that chassis, Josh and I are going to go ahead and get started on the Coyote engine. We're going to put a billet oil pump gear in here. So we're going to take the whole front timing cover off, valve covers, take the supercharger off, and put this oil pump gear in and make it solid.
Supercharged Coyote, I like it.
That's actually one of the biggest downfalls of the Coyote motors.
I like the Coyotes. They're throwing a supercharger on that Coyote, so that thing's gonna make plenty of power. I actually built a supercharged Coyote for a Mustang about a year ago.
I know dual red cam is done in multiple different applications through its years. You know what I mean? It's sport compact stuff. It's you can find a 4-banger that has the dual red cam. Performance gains, I do believe it's like RPMs, like you can get more RPMs with the dual red cam. I'm not one to tell you one versus another. Everyone's got their application. Of course, I recommend if you're building a Ford, put a Ford in it if you can, and your budget, of course, goes with it. If you're doing LS, I mean, of course, LS is LT, modern drivetrain. We put that just about everything, but 90% of the vehicles we build is GM stuff.
I mean, yeah, with the Coyote being a dual overhead cam motor, your V pattern is spread wider than LS, so it does make it a little more difficult to fit them in some vehicles without doing a lot of modifications. Sometimes you got to do some frame modifications because of how wide that motor is for your headers to go where they need to go. As far as doing the LS swap versus the Coyote swap, the only thing I really see that plays a major difference in both of them is the cost. The Coyote is way more money just for the engine. The harnesses are more money. It's the newest thing out. 5.0 right now, still between $9,000 and $11,000 for a used one. I can go to the junkyard and pick up an LS for less than $1,000, drop it in a fucking vehicle and go.
Putting a Willwood master in it, or clutch master in it. Willwood brakes, good options.
Cut the hole out for the clutch master, so now we have a clutch and we can use a manual transmission with this truck. Now, since we did move and change the pedal assembly,
He's doing that pedal box assembly that's factory is for like an automatic setup, and it doesn't have all the stuff for the clutch, so I get why he's doing that.
A traditional automatic vehicle, of course, you don't have a clutch master. You really have no other option. Kind of same situation with us doing our C10 that we're building. The brake booster and everything we're putting behind the firewall. So technically there's no room. So in that application, if that vehicle did not come with a manual, you have no other option other than to mount it probably where he mounted it.
so I got the brake pedal and the clutch pedal in. As you can see, here's the reservoirs for both of them, master. Next is actually figuring out where the fuse box is gonna go.
Under the dash, just keeps it out of the engine compartment, makes for a cleaner install, more protected inside. There's a lot of times, a lot of vehicles have a lot of accessories under the hood.
It's actually gonna be the engine fuse box because it is a standalone from Ford Performance. So that's gonna be the next thing going on. And apart from that, we're also gonna have to figure out what are we gonna do with having AC and heat in this truck. Because I mean, we are in Texas. Even though it's a race truck, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we need AC.
If they do plan on going full race truck and putting it on the drag strip and stuff, I wouldn't personally suggest putting AC in it, because one, it'll lighten it up and you have less parasitic draw on the motor, meaning it won't rob horsepower from it because it's trying to spin that AC compressor. Not running AC also saves you space under the dash for wiring, and you can tuck stuff a lot easier. It's a cleaner engine bay because you don't have AC lines and everything in the way.
I mean, the only thing I would see in controversy with putting AC in a race vehicle is added weight, added strain on the motor. But as long as your AC system's set up right, when you floor it, it will shut the AC down and you no longer have drag on it, but you still have the extra weight.
I think that, when putting air conditioning in a race truck, I guess you would say, understand that race truck will be on the street. So even if it's not on the street, it's waiting in line. Like Texas is anything like Florida. Florida's hot. I mean, right now it's chilly, but when you sit and think of staging lanes, if you're at a race, And that one, I don't believe that's even like going to be like a drag car build. From what I've seen so far, I would say it's more of like an autocross type deal. You're not going to have the AC running while you're racing. It's just one of those things you don't do. You would basically have AC on prior to starting. You shut it off, go do your thing, and then turn your AC on when when you're done, etc. Now it's just one more attachment that the belt's attached to, so I don't really see a problem putting air conditioning in a multi-purpose vehicle. Like if you're doing autocrossing, drag racing, etc. Now there's different levels of drag racing and different levels of racing. So when let's say it's a full-blown drag car. Like you don't see these funny cars with air conditioning. I mean, they run down this, 8th mile, whatever, in 4 seconds. You don't need air conditioning. Is it hot? Hell yeah, it's hot. But they just got to get down there and do it. But a lot of these cars that we do, along with Gas Monkey, they actually are street cars. So they're multi-purpose vehicles, and you can do both with.
All right, guys, so we got the front suspension knocked out. Ricky got the engine all buttoned up, other than just bolting the supercharger on. We need to put a pull plate, but we're ready to pretty much go in with the front, and now it's time to dive into this entire rear suspension setup.
That Curry rear end is a very good option. Curry is nice rear end, especially when they got all the billet third housing the third member and all that stuff for the rear end. The 9-inch is proven. 9 is very strong. Personally, I love them, especially when they're all billet and stuff like that. It makes everything very, very lightweight. Going Willwood brakes all the way around this thing, so it's going to be a pretty sweet setup.
Cut to fit axles, it's a common use thing. For example, if you narrow rear end up and you have to pull an inch out, aftermarket splined axles have, of course, on a 9-inch, they're splined, they bolted, so life is good. If you do, so you have to pull an inch out when it's all said and done, and you have the access to narrow the rear end up, you have a narrowing jig and the whole 9, you can literally just cut that rear end, cut that inch off the axle, bolt it in, and you're in business. Now, for certain applications, what they call C-clip style axles. And C-clip axles, you have to get a direct fit, direct measurement every time you do it. So, really, basically it's just like an extra 2 or 3 inches that is basically splined on those axles to make them cut to fit. They're not splined the whole way. I know there's a lot of other companies that make them even longer spline than, let's say, 3 inches or whatever that Kerry has here. It's a common thing. It's very useful, definitely in the street car world, because if you have to modify anything or go back into it, guess what? You have quick access, take it apart, cut the rear end, cut the axle, put it back together. Technically, if you have the right tools and equipment, man, you're back in business in like the same weekend.
Yeah, so they're working on a Ford 9-inch rear end. On those ones they're called front loaders. So the whole carrier comes out of the rear end. We're on a normal, say like a GM 10 bolt, 12 bolt, you pull a back cover off, you have to pull the axles out to get the center section out. Even with a 9-inch, you still have to pull the axles out, but it all comes out in one piece. It's a lot heavier. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt to get in and to get out because they're so heavy, but they're a much better and stronger rear end.
If you're looking for budget friendly, you get a stock 9-inch housing and third member. It's just the only thing with that is they're a lot heavier. Your gears, you either have to swap it out or leave it the way it is.
A cheaper version, or I guess it's not even a version, it's a cheaper application that uses a lot of 9-inch parts and pieces with some fabrication. We use the 8.8. It's out of like the Ranger, the Mustangs, a lot of people use it. So what I do in our applications is if they're much cheaper, you can buy one off of like a Ford Explorer or something, and then you can cut the housing ends off. And I buy new like Mosier housing ends, like what they call Big Ford. So Big Ford now has the big bearing, and I can use like the 9-inch brakes, I can use 9-inch axles. I can basically do everything like a Ford 9-inch. But you just gotta cut and modify and change that up. The only difference is the housing isn't in the front side like a 9-inch, it's in the back side, it's got a cover. But it's definitely a cheaper option for customers if they wanna go that route. But normally, if you're spending good quality, 9-inch is the go-to. Willwood brakes, common deal. Of course, there's different level to Willwood brakes. There's, you got the smaller 12-inch. I think they go down to 11, which is like a caster rotor with, a caliper, like a 4-piston. You can do 14s, and I know there's even newer applications that are up to a 16-inch rotor, 6-piston calipers, and they're freaking badass. But you got to pay for them, so there's different level of cost which comes involved. Those 14s are exactly what I have on my personal vehicle, which I recommend to everybody.
So far, I like it. I like the build. I like the F100 Rangers. I like Coyotes, 9 inches. It's going to be a pretty sweet build once it's all said and done. I really like it.
I own a Mustang. Ford has their good points. Chevy's got their good points. Is one better than the other? I don't think so. It depends on your preference of vehicle you want and what kind of money you want to spend. When it comes to a Ford, yeah, it's a little more money to build a Ford than a Chevy is, and that's why a lot of people build Chevys, is because parts are readily available. You can find them on any street corner half the time. That's why a lot of my friends build Chevys, because they can afford to build them. I mean, look at a Coyote motor. I mean, if you're going to be upwards of 500 horsepower, you got to change the oil pump gears, because that's what's bad in those motors. The gears are $1,500. Now, when I build an LS over 500 horsepower, do I got to put a set of $1,500 gears in the motor? No. It's all on preference and how much money you want to spend. If you got the money to spend and build a Ford, go for it. And if you want to go even better than a Ford, get you a Mopar. That one will bankrupt you.